Dead Art might be one of, if not the most controversial perks in Dead by Daylight history, but why? And how can we fix it? What up, Jumzy here, and welcome back to another Dead by Daylight video. In this video, I'll be talking about the Dead Hard perk and why it needs to be removed or at least get nerfed. Before we start, however, keep in mind that although fun and learning... I'm sorry, wrong script. A little disclaimer, I am not a killer main, nor a survivor main. I played both sides equally and have enough experience to talk about this perk. I'm not just an angry and upset killer main who has faced one too many Dead Arts, which I have, but I also use Dead Art myself a lot. With that said, we can finally start the video. I hope you enjoy. Dead Art is a teachable perk from David King, who got released with the Huntress in patch 1.6.0. Whenever you press the active ability button while being injured, you dash forward and get the exhaustion status effect for 40 seconds. Now if you didn't play Dead by Daylight at the time, you might not know that this was very strong, as during the dash you get iframes, which means invincibility frames, meaning you couldn't get downed by any means. This, along with the fact that Dead Art also gave you distance, made this perk one of the most controversial perks in Dead by Daylight. Now after only 5 whole years, Behavior finally decided to nerf Dead Art. In patch 6.1.0, the ability to dash forward had been removed, and instead of getting iframes, you would now get the endurance status effect for half a second instead. Now while this does seem like a good nerf, it actually made it worse, as now everyone would be using Dead Art solely for negating dying, as opposed to using Dead Art for distance like before. Almost another year later, Behavior decided to nerf Dead Art once more by limiting Dead Art to a maximum of 2 uses, once every time you get unhooked. This is the version we have to this day, but you might be wondering, why is this still bad? I mean, isn't Dead Art balanced now? The first thing survivor mains say when someone says Dead Art isn't fair is just wait it out. Now in my opinion, this is a very dumb thing to say. First of all, you might forget to wait out a Dead Art. It's not like you're constantly thinking about who's been hooked yet and can I hit them or should I wait for Dead Art. It's one of the many perks in the game, so it wouldn't make much sense to constantly be thinking about that one single perk. Secondly, in many cases, you physically can't wait out the Dead Art, as many survivors will use Dead Art right before vaulting or dropping a pallet, for example. If you don't hit them, they will get away or stun you. Now obviously, in some cases you can just wait it out, but if you think about it, it is extremely weird because, and this is my third point, why on this absolutely fully round big blue ball that we call the Earth does a psychopathic serial killer have to wait before stabbing their victim? Like, what in the alternate universe Michael Myers shit is that? There's literally no other psychological horror game in existence in which the murderer has to wait before, well, murdering. So yeah, the just wait it out argument is the silliest of silly Billy arguments. Now before we go to the next argument, if you can even call it that, I want to compare Dead Art with some other second chance perks. Almost every second chance perk has a fair downside or requirement. Adrenaline requires all generators to be completed. For Unbreakable you need to recover first and you can only use it once. Off the Record's endurance will go away when progressing the game, and so on. Now Dead Art does not have any of this. Sure, you need to get unhooked first, but if you don't get unhooked, you didn't need Dead Art in the first place. You're basically getting rewarded by playing bad. On top of that, there is no timer or such tied to Dead Art, meaning you can literally use it whenever you please. A great example that does have this is Decisive Strike, a second chance perk with a balanced downsides. Whenever you get unhooked, Decisive Strike will activate for 60 seconds. If you get grabbed by the killer within these 60 seconds, you get faced with a difficult skill check, which if successfully hit, will release you from the killer's grasp and stun them in the process. Now this by itself isn't too fair, so they made it so that this perk can only be used once, deactivates in endgame collapse, and also deactivates whenever you do a conspicuous action, which is any action that can progress the game, such as repairing and healing. Now Dead Art doesn't have any of this, which in my opinion is very weird. Now there's one more argument pro Dead Art, which is that Dead Art can be difficult, and some people even go as far as saying it is a skill to actually hit Dead Art, as the timing does need to be nearly perfect. The endurance status effect only lasts half a second, meaning it is quite a small window. And even if you do hit it, you also have to mend, which costs even more time. Now obviously this is completely true. Dead Art does require a little bit of skill, unless you're just, running at the killer, for example. But all of that doesn't matter once I explain the most important argument against Dead Art. You were supposed to die. Now this is basically the only argument you need against Dead Art. Whenever you use Dead Art, it's not a skill, but rather a skill issue. You were supposed to die. And if it wasn't for that stupid perk, you would be laying on the ground. Survivors already get 3 hook states and 2 health states, which can be infinitely regenerated. Meaning you already have about 9 lives, 8 of which can be lost by a mistake you make. Throwing 2 more on top of this is just unnecessary. Survivors are already supposed to die at some point in chase. Whenever you make a mistake or get mind gamed by the killer, you should be punished for it, as you played poorly. Even if it's just one tiny mistake, that can change the whole match. Just one dead heart can extend the chase by many minutes and can totally change the outcome of the match. Survivors didn't get that many lives, health states and hook states for no reason. Making mistakes and getting mind gamed are the core mechanics of the game, and that is pretty much the only way to win or lose in the chase. Now last but certainly not least, we have the solution for dead heart. Remove it. No, I'm just kidding. Make dead heart an anti-tunnel perk pretty much exactly like Decisive Strike. Add a 60-second timer, make it so that it deactivates in endgame collapse and whenever doing a conspicuous action, and maybe even make it so they can only use dead heart once. This makes so much more sense, as now it's really just meant for tunneling. Now an argument against this might be that dead heart would be basically a worse version of off the record, but this is just an idea. They could make dead heart into something else, but with the same mechanics. As long as the stupid dead heart being a reliability for survivors and an absolute pain in the ass for killers isn't a thing anymore.